Since this week deals with FICA taxes, and a big part of FICA taxes is Social Security, I thought it was important to dive deeper than the book goes and actually look at all the ins and outs of Social Security. By the end of this lecture and this week, as you go through the notes in more detail, you should have a much better understanding of what exactly is Social Security, where it comes from, who gets it, how much do you get. That's a lot of the things we're going to go through during this video. So the first part, you can read through what the Social Security is. One of the questions that I get asked quite often is, well, what's it matter? Social Security is going to run out of money anyway by the time I retire in, say, 30 years. Technically, that's not right. No, the Social Security won't run out as long as people are still putting money into it. So there's no way that will run out. However, what may happen is, instead of if you were supposed to receive, say, $1,000 a month, Social Security may not be able to supplement all 1,000. You may only get 90% of that, because only 90% there's people paying in, or whatever the situation is. They may not have enough to pay you the full amount, but it will not run out. So I wanted to give us a little bit of background here on how much is collected. So how do I know if there'll be enough or not? Well, one of the things I wanted to look at here is, if you pull up this site, well, I'll just kind of give you a summary first. As you can see here, the yearly increase has gone from 190 billion. What I mean by this is a buffer zone. So every year, by around 2007, around those years, there was 190 billion coming in more than what was being paid out. So we were continuously racking up more and more money into this buffer zone for that future day when more people are taking money out of Social Security than putting in. Well, since 2007, that number has dropped pretty drastically. Now that buffer zone is between around 25 to 35 billion a year per year for the last 3 years. Now, that's still a nice buffer zone, but eventually it will begin to run out. We'll begin to hit zero, and then we'll be we'll be on the low side. We'll pay out 25 to 35 billion more. But there's plenty in that rainy day fund, as long as it has been properly invested and not misused by the government. We don't really know. We can't control that. But supposedly there should be at least 2 trillion for when that time comes, when there's less money going out. There's less money coming in than going out. All right, so who's qualified to draw Social Security? That's one of the things that you should always know. The key figure here is, if you have 40 quarters of coverage, that equals 10 years. As long as you have worked for 10 years, and if you worked for that whole time during 10 years, then you would be covered. If you only worked for 1 quarter, well, then that's just 1 quarter. But 40 total quarters equals 10 years. And to count as a quarter of a year, you have to make at least 1,300 in that quarter. Now, that number is inflated every year, depending on the inflation. So back in, say, 2000, if you were working then, it would have been quite a bit lower. As you can see, it went up $40 from just last year. If you want more information about those quarters, how much do you need, you can go to anything that's in blue here, these links, click on them, and it gives you more information on where I got some of this, if that's important to you. Okay, let's skip down now to how many people are collecting Social Security. I thought this was pretty cool. And I'll actually pull this chart up, but just a quick little overview. 61 million is what the Social Security website is saying are people actually drawing Social Security at this time. So here's here it is. Number of people, if you can to read this properly, notice the numbers are in thousands. So if it says 61,000, that's actually 61 million. That's the total of people collecting just Social Security. not what's considered supplemental Social Security. Those are for people who are disabled and low income. That's a different piece. That's not a whole lot more, but this is just the Social Security, what you pay in for that 6.2%. So the average monthly dollars that people get on Social Security, it's given here, $12.56 a month. So anywhere, it could be over that or under that, but that's the 50 percentile. You could go down here and see the survivors, people widowed, non-disabled widowers. So 3.7 million people who their spouses died, they're now collecting their spouse's Social Security, perhaps because theirs wasn't high enough or they didn't have any at all. So let's bring back up my my sheet. I would definitely take the time and look through each one of these and just see them more in detail. I think it's pretty interesting. So you can see here the disabled people who are collecting Social Security who are disabled. About 17% of those drawing Social Security are disabled. Now, another key question that you get asked a lot is, when can I start drawing Social Security? Because that has, within the last, I don't know, maybe 5 years, maybe 10 now, the Congress has decided that the Social Security age has gone up. It used to be 65, now it's all the way up to 67. But the age, it begins to increase slowly depending on what year you were born. So I'm going to pull up that chart here next. Normal retirement age. So here's the kind of the cutoff for a lot of the baby boomers. If you were born between the in the 40s up through the mid 50s, your normal retirement age is now 66. Anybody prior to 37 is still the old 65. But for most people watching this lecture, the normal retirement age that you will have is 67. Now, there's nothing to say that that number won't increase by the time you get closer to 67. But as of now, that is your normal retirement age. So anybody who comes to you, if you have a parent and they were born in 1956, you could tell them you can have a full retirement coming in at 66 and 4 months. Now, if you decide to delay your Social Security, you can, and up through age 70, you can get an 8% increase each year that you decide to delay it. So you have to decide if that's worth it by A, what is your living conditions and how healthy are you? Do you expect to live to be at least 85? Usually you'd have to be about 85 to recoup the lost wages that you didn't take at ages 66 through 70. You're going to have to recoup those wages. Or you can decide that you want to start collecting before your full retirement age, and the beginning is 62. Now I'm going to pull up this third chart here, and you can see what happens if you decide to collect early or late, depending on the year you were born. So here again was that 66. Let's use that as our base. Your normal retirement age is 66, so you get 100%. But if you decide to take retirement a year early, then whatever you were supposed to get, and we'll talk about that in just a few minutes, how to decide what you were going to get, you would have to take 93 1/3%, and then that's what you will get when you retire. All the way back to age 62, then you only get 3/4 of what you were supposed to get. So if you were going to get $1,000 a month, you would only get $750 a month. Whereas if you waited to the age of 70, you would get 1,320 instead of 1,000. But again, it's going to take you a while to recoup those years that you lost. For the majority in this class, ages 1960 and later, if you decide to take retirement early, you only get 70% at age 62. Your full retirement age is at 67, and then 8% each year brings you up to 124% if you decide to wait till the age of 70. I thought this was a really helpful chart to look at. Okay, so what if you decide to work, if you decide to draw Social Security but continue to work? Is there a reduction in your benefits? And well, it depends. Depends on your age. If you decide to collect Social Security and you are below your full retirement age, then yes, you will get a reduction. Notice what it says here, $1 is reduced from your benefits for every $2 you're over the limit. So you think, okay, what's the limit for this year? And this number goes up, $16,920. If you make $16,922, you would get $1 off of your benefits. So I give you some, okay, thus if you were to get $12,000 a year from Social Security and you earn $20,000 in wages, how much will be deducted from your Social Security? And I go through it here, you will have $1,540 removed from the $12,000 you were supposed to get because you earned over the cap. Now, once you hit your full retirement age, say it's 67 or 66, then you can make as much as you want and there are no deductions. Applying for Social Security. If anybody asks you if they're getting close, you would want to advise them to start applying for their Social Security 3 months before they plan to start getting it. Can my non-working spouse also receive Social Security? Yes, they can. They can receive a portion of yours in addition to what you normally get. Let's keep going down through here. This is spouse of a retired worker. You can get, what this is saying is the spouse can start drawing early. And also what this is saying is you can also get Social Security benefits from your ex-husband or ex-wife if you were married for at least 10 years. If you were married for at least 10 years, then you qualify to begin to get their Social Security, at least your part of it. So you can see the part for the spouse is as much as 50% of the worker's amount. So if the worker was going to get $1,000 when they retire, the spouse can get as much as $500 additional. That doesn't cut into the workers. That's an additional $500. Now, again, that's at their full retirement age. If they take it earlier, they will get that reduced benefit of, say, 75%. Now, the spouse doesn't get both. The spouse can get 50% of their husband or wife's, or they can just take their own, whichever is higher. Now, a lot of times for people who are retired now, the man worked a lot outside of the home and the woman worked in the home, so she didn't make as much Social Security, didn't pay into Social Security. So therefore, that's why this is important for those spouses. They can still get money even if they didn't work very much. They can pull from their husbands. Can my dependent child or grandchild receive Social Security? The answer is yes. If they are under the age of 18, the child can also get as much as 50% of the worker's primary amount, and that is limited to the family max. The family max, it says the family can receive is between 150 to 180% of the worker's full retirement benefits. So in a sense, you can't have the worker and then have 3 kids all receiving 50% of that. It will be cut off at some point. Now, I'm not going to go into that detail here because that's more individualized if that's going to happen. The next question then is, well, my spouse is retired, I'm collecting, but then what if my spouse passes away? If your spouse passes away, you can then jump into their spot and start receiving 100% of what they were receiving, even if you were only getting 50% before. So that's a good thing. So if the husband was getting 1,000 and the wife was only getting 500, If the husband dies, the wife can then jump up and start collecting his entire 1,000 until she dies. If you remarry after you reach the age 60, your remarriage will not affect your survivor benefits, so that's important to know. And a divorced person who their divorced spouse has died can receive benefits. Again, this is if you were married at least 10 years. Unmarried kids when the main parent dies or grandparent, they can receive up to 75%. Let's keep going down. All right, this is an important, very important area here. You want to know, how much am I going to get when I retire? And how does that determine? Social Security, what they do is they go back 35 years and they average out your wage each year that you worked. Now, what they also do is they don't penalize you for working, say, in the 1980s and you made a lot less because of the inflation. What they do is increase those wages and they multiply it by an index factor for each year that you worked up until the present. So I'm going to pull up this chart at this time so you can see. Let's say you were working back in the 1990s. If you were working in the 1990s, well, what happens? Let's just say 82, so we can see these up here. If you were starting working in 82 and you are only earning, say, $13,000 a year, because that was a normal wage then, they're going to index that by this inflation rate that they have determined, and it's like you were making $45,000 in today's earnings. So you'll see the indexed earnings here. They don't jump up very much. They're trying to stay pretty consistent. So way back in 77, it's 44, almost 45,000. All the way up to 2016, it only went up about $6,000. So that's how they would calculate your indexed earnings. They'll say, what did you earn in 1994? They'll multiply it by this number, and that's what they use as what you're earning in today's dollars. So when they average out each year for the past 35 years, they're going to use this $47,000 figure instead of the 23 that you actually earned, or whatever you earned, they're going to multiply it by 2.02. So that's nice to know. Okay. Now, each year's wages can't exceed that year's cap. So the year's cap, you'd have to go back and research those and see what those were. I know back in 99, the cap was as low as 72,000, I believe, or somewhere around there. So the cap has gone up quite a bit over the last 15 to 20 years. So then you're going to find what your average was. You're going to divide that by 12 to get a per month basis. And that will be, that's how they'll determine then your earnings. Come down here and you can see the exact computation then. So they're going to take that when you divide it by 12. So let's say comes out, let's say you had an average earning of 40,000. If you divide 40,000 by 12, you're going to get something like 4,200, just to get you close there, 4,200. And then instead of, you don't get 4,200 a month by any means, you then have to go through this formula. They say, okay, out of the 4,200, the first 885, you get 90% of the benefits. Then anything over 885 that you earn, so the 886 through the 4,200, you get only 32% of that. And then if you earned over, which in this case we didn't, you would only get 15% of those dollars over 5336. So I'm going to take us through this computation, and what I'm figuring here is they went through the index, added up all the year's wages, and it came out to be 45,000. So then if you take 45,000 and you divide that by 12, let's do that real quickly to get the exact number. 45,000 divided by 12, that's 3,750. Okay, so 3,750. The first 885 you get 90%. So this is the number we're going to use. Now 3750, we'll take what's left. So we subtract out the first 885 that we already calculated up here. So you take 3750 minus 885, and then as the formula shows, we take 32% of that, or that comes out to be $916.80. Add that in to the 796, and this person is entitled to get $17.19.30 a month, which if you multiply that out by 12 months, that equals $20,000 a year. Now you think 20,000, okay, that's pretty good. But really, 20,000 compared to your average earnings over the past of 45,000, that 20,000 is only 45% of what you were making. Now that's average. In your last few years of working, usually you're on the high side of the average. So pretend this person made 55,000. When this person retires, that next year when they start getting Social Security, they're only earning then 37% of what they were just a year ago. So you have to decide, as a retiree, can I live on 37% of my previous year's wages? So that's why people have a 401k IRA, to catch themselves up and hopefully have enough to live off of during their retirement to still make them happy. Now, there will be a lot of expenses that you no longer have when you're retired. You may have had your home paid off. Hopefully you'll have your schooling paid off. Those are some of the two biggest expenses that people pay, at least in their 30s and 40s. But again, your medical probably will ratchet up big time because you have more medical expenses at that point when you're older. So at this time, I want you to try to do this on your own. Using a wage of 66,000, determine about what the person would get if they had an average earnings of 66,000 over their life. So go ahead and hit pause, and then I'll show the answer here in just a couple seconds. So the answer for if you had an earnings of 66,000, the first thing we want to do is divide it by 12. So that's 5,500 a month. The first 885, that's still the same number that we were at before. Then we go up to, but not over. In this case, we are over, so we're going to stop at 5336 because that's what the chart told us to do. And then we're going to subtract out those first $885 like we did before, that we've already calculated on. Take 32% of that, and then whatever amount we were over the second cap here, which is only $164 that we were over because we made $5,500 in a month. At 15%, that's an extra $24.60. So altogether, this individual, by earning 66,000 or 66,000, they're going to earn $22.45 a month, or $26,900 in a year. All right. Now, if you wanted to figure out a quick way, this is a good calculator to do. If you don't want to have to go through and determine what your average earnings are and then do the work, let's go ahead and look at this. You can easily fill in, enter your date of birth, enter in your current earnings in the year. If you're retired, then they assume you're retired. Enter your future date of retirement, and then you can hit submit. So let's do this with an example. So I have this example here, date of birth of September 1, 1980, current earnings 42,000. And when you do the calculation, I thought this person would be retiring in 2048. So let's put in this information and see what the benefit will be. Okay, so let's go back to our chart. September 1, 1980. So September 1, 1980, earnings 42,000. Date of retirement, 09/20/48. And I tell us in today's dollars. This person can expect to receive approximately $17.60. Now that's just an approximate, of course, but $17.60 would be our answer there on a monthly basis. So then if you take $17.60 times 12, you're going to get the yearly amount. Here was the calculation. What earnings is the program assuming you made in the year 2030? Okay, so if we want to see, well, how is the program getting this information? So we click on this, go back to the chart. It's saying it's averaging out your wages for each year, and then we put in 42,000. And then these are the wages they're assuming that you earned those back wages in prior years. If you wanted to update these, you could, and then that'll give you a new amount. So between the years of 2017 to 2047, they're saying you're going to still earn 42,000. What if, let's go down to this next one. What if you enter a higher number, assuming a higher average over the 30 years? So let's say instead of having 42,000, we put into that chart, let's put in here 48,000. We expect to make 48,000. You can see that number goes up because we expected our yearly amount earnings to go up from 42 to 48. And we can get the monthly. If your numbers are close within a few dollars, this chart does change because I did this a few months ago. Even that little bit of a difference will update the chart. It updates every month depending on how much you are earning. So that's why it will factor just a teeny bit different. And then if you reverted back, we can see, well, how much is that money? How much can I expect when inflation is involved? So inflation is going to factor in, and instead of getting $17.60 in today's dollars, if I would have hit the other button and it said future dollars, they estimate that I'll get 5,000 every month, which equates to 63,000 in a year. But 63,000 will only have the earning power of what 22,000 does today. So not terribly a lot. Okay, those are disabled. How do they know? How can you determine if you are going to get benefits or not? What criteria do you have to meet? You can read down through here. Basically, if you're before age 24, you need to have 6 credits earned over 3 years. 6 credits isn't a lot. That's just a year and a half of work. And then you would be considered able to get disability. Can a spouse collect due to disability? So your spouse collect on your disability? Yes, they can. Again, at 50%. Can a child? Yes, they can collect based on your disability as well. And then finally, what I wanted to show you is average monthly benefits. How much do people normally get? If you're single, the average normal amount is about $13.60 a month. 2 people together, living together who are married, will average about $22.60, so not even double. Because generally, one of the spouses is probably collecting only 50% of the primary spouse. I thought this was a pretty interesting stat here. 22% live on Social Security alone. So 1 out of 5, almost 1 out of 4 live on just Social Security. They have no supplement income. And then even 1 out of 3 only up to 90%. So basically, they only live on Social Security alone and just have a little bit extra coming in from some other source. 1 out of 3 people who are retired. I thought that was pretty interesting. The last piece here, who got the first number? You can read through here. I thought those were just some interesting items. And then the last thing, who was the first person to receive Social Security. It was this woman who she only contributed to the program before she retired $24.75. But after she retired and 35 years later, she didn't die. She only died at 35 years later. She ended up receiving out of that $24 she paid in, $22,000. So I thought that was pretty interesting to see that people who paid in at the very earliest got a heck of a deal. All right, that is it for this week 3. And we'll be back with an updated lecture for week 4.